Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Jaishankar.
And I'm Jaishankar. And on the show, fears of an all-out war in West Asia heightened once again as Israel blamed Hezbollah for a rocket attack in Golan Heights that killed 12 teenagers and children. Panic has gripped the region. We will bring you the latest on this on the show today.
Also on the show, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar is in Tokyo for the Quad meeting. Ahead of the meeting, the External Affairs Minister also held a bilateral with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, where reportedly the two discussed Ukraine and India's ties with Russia. We will be getting you a better understanding of what happened in that meeting. This and a lot more. Let's get started with the headlines.
Israel Security Cabinet authorizes Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government to decide on the manner and the timing of a response to a rocket strike in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights that killed 12 teenagers and children.
The White House says rocket fire that killed 12 young people in the Golan Heights was conducted by Lebanese Hezbollah. Calls the attack horrific.
President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says Turkey might enter Israel to help Palestinians as it had done in the past in Libya and Nagorno-Karabakh. Does not spell out what sort of intervention he was suggesting.
Millions of Venezuelans voted on Sunday in a fraught presidential election, with socialist incumbent Nicolas Maduro facing the biggest challenge yet to his party's 25-year hold on power.
Kamala Harris's election campaign says it has raised $200 million and signed up 170,000 new volunteers in the week since she became the Democratic Party's presidential candidate.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken emphasizes the importance of a just and enduring peace for Ukraine in a meeting with Indian Foreign Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar. The discussion comes amid a visit planned to Ukraine by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
India could win 2 more medals today at the Paris Games. Shooters Ramita Jindal and Arjun Babuta will compete in the women's and men's 10-meter air rifle finals respectively. All right, our top focus on World DNA this morning. West Asia is on edge. The fear of an all-out war between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah is looming large in the region.
Well, this after a rocket attack in Golan Heights killed 12 teenagers and children. Israel has blamed Hezbollah for the strike, and the Security Cabinet has authorized Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to decide on the manner and timing for the retaliation.
Thousands of mourners joined a funeral procession on Sunday for 12 children who were killed in a rocket attack on the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. It marks the single deadliest attack in Israel or Israeli-annexed territory since Hamas's assault sparked the Gaza war on October 7th. And it is fueling fears of significant escalation between Israel and Hezbollah militants in Lebanon. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said he visited the town of Majd al-Shams early on Sunday, describing the site of the attack as, quote, a place where innocent girls and boys were murdered during a soccer game. He vowed to retaliate against Hezbollah for the strike. Hezbollah initially announced it fired rockets at Israeli military sites in the Golan Heights, but denied involvement in the attack on Majd al-Shams.
There is no justification for terrorism, period. And every indication is that, indeed, the rockets were the rocket was from Hezbollah.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Tokyo said Israel had the right to defend itself. But he said Washington also did not want to see further escalation in violence.
We don't want to see it spread. That has been one of our goals from day one, from October 7th on.
Majd al-Shams is a Druze village. The Druze are an Arab minority who practice a form of Islam and make up more than half of the 40,000-strong population of the Golan Heights, territory captured from Syria by Israel in the 1967 Middle East War and annexed in a move not recognized by most countries. Here's one resident who calls himself Haytham. He says, we need to strive now to sign a deal and stop this damned war. We want to live. We don't want to die. Israeli and Hezbollah fighters in southern Lebanon have been exchanging fire for months, but appeared to be avoiding an escalation that could lead to all-out war. Saturday's strike threatened to tip the standoff into a more dangerous phase, and United Nations officials urged maximum restraint from both sides. The conflict has forced tens of thousands of people in both Lebanon and Israel to leave their homes.
Israeli jets hit targets in southern Lebanon, but there are expectations a stronger response could follow the security meeting convened by Netanyahu.
Reports suggest Hezbollah is on high alert and has cleared some key sites in both Lebanon's south and eastern Bekaa Valley in case of an Israeli attack.
Any conflict could bring in Iran, which warned Israel that a strong reaction would lead to unprecedented consequences.
While tensions rise on Israel's northern border, in the south of the country, the war in Gaza continues. The Israeli Defense Forces launched a series of air attacks on the Burej and Nuseirat refugee camps, hours after ordering Palestinians there to leave. Now, according to the United Nations Relief and Work Agency, UNRWA, 86% of the Gaza Strip is currently under such orders.
Meanwhile, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said Turkey may enter Israel to help Palestinians as it had done in the past in Libya and Nagorno-Karabakh, though he did not spell out what sort of an intervention he was suggesting. All right, to discuss this further, we're now being joined by Dr. Alan Burstein, Visiting Assistant Professor at Israel Institute, Fellow at the Department of Political Science, University of California, Irvine. Thank you so much for joining us on World DNA, sir.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
Always a pleasure to have you, sir. Israel and Hezbollah have exchanged near-daily fire since the start of the war in October last year. Do you think the latest rocket attack on the Golan Heights that raises the prospects of an escalation in the region of an all-out war, something that has been feared for a long while now?
Absolutely. There is no doubt that Israel's retaliation is going to be at a level that we have not seen up until now. Israel, as part of this equation between Hezbollah and the IDF, like you said, there's been daily exchange of fire, but they have their sort of like rules of the game. Hezbollah doesn't fire too far south in Israel. Israel does not carry out attacks in certain areas in Lebanon. And every now and then there's a bit of a game changer. We saw that also between Iran and Israel back in April. All of a sudden there's another big attack and then the rules change. The question will be what Hezbollah will do after that. Israel's going to retaliate, and there's going to be a big retaliation. It'll be up to Hezbollah. Do they then retaliate further, and that'll be a big escalation? Or does Hezbollah accept, okay, we fired that missile, Israel did that, and we go back to the quote-unquote rules of the game?
Dr. Burstein, this involvement of Turkey, which is being suggested, the statement that we may enter Israel to help Palestinians like we have done in the past in Libya and Nagorno-Karabakh. What are your thoughts on this? What are they even suggesting here?
I have to be honest, I do not take that as a serious threat. Erdogan has, throughout the last year, really changed his tune. Prior to the war, he was working very hard to mend the relationship with Israel. He met with Prime Minister Netanyahu months before the war, and they're working to reestablish the relationship. Then, when the war broke out, he shifted tune. Even the examples that he gives, the involvements in Nagorno-Karabakh and in Libya, Turkey did not invade those countries. Turkey sent a peacekeeping force to one and was invited by the government in the other to help keep the peace. Turkey has a lot of arms deals with Israel. Whenever they're involved militarily somewhere, they buy arms from Israel. That is, I read, a very empty threat. It's a rhetoric threat. It's one that was done within his own party position, a party meeting. I think that he's trying very hard to show that he is on the Palestinian side. I think that he hopes to strengthen his party that way. I think it's been working for him to some extent. Obviously, every sort of that threat has been taken seriously, but I do not see any military intervention from Turkey anywhere in the near future.
Right, so that being said, with the perceived escalations, the latest attack as well, do you think this risks the involvement of other regional proxies, the axis of resistance here? And is Israel equipped to deal with that?
So we are seeing waves of the axis of resistance, as you called it, which is accurate. We see that in waves in the war. At the beginning of the war, between October and February, we really saw Iranian-backed militias throughout Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Yemen, Lebanon get involved attacking American targets. Then there was much more of a lull, and for a couple of months they did not get that involved after U.S. troops had been killed in Tower 22 base in Jordan. Now all of a sudden the Houthis managed to detonate a suicide drone in Tel Aviv. Israel attacked Yemen for the first time. We also saw between Israel and Iran in April. So we're seeing another wave of the involvement of the proxies in the region. Obviously it's what everyone fears. Like I said, though, it really depends on how Hezbollah now reacts. Because right now, no one doubts that Israel's going to have a major reaction. It'll be up to Hezbollah. Do they just take that and absorb that and say that's okay? Somewhat the way Israel and Iran back in April, they attacked them, okay, and they both went back to being okay, so to speak, with each other, with the tensions. Or do they want to escalate? I do not think Hezbollah wants to escalate right now. I think it'll be dangerous for them politically in Lebanon. But it remains to be seen what Israel's retaliation is, and can Hezbollah afford to also not retaliate, so to speak.
Israel-Hezbollah tensions have been mounting since a while. This is again another phase of those mounting tensions. Hezbollah keeps sharing those drone videos captured of strategic locations within Israel. But of course, as we progress further into it, we'll get to know how far this gets escalated. Thank you so much for joining in. That was Dr. Alan Burstein, visiting assistant professor at Israel Institute, fellow Department of Political Science, University of California, Irvine. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure speaking with you, sir.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
All right, let's shift our focus now. Polls have closed in Venezuela's presidential elections.
And of course, as counting of votes continues, the opposition hopes to dethrone the incumbent Nicolas Maduro,
who's seeking a third straight term in office. Maduro has been president since the death of Hugo Chavez in 2013. His socialist PSUV party came to power a quarter of a century ago. But these polls are the biggest challenge they've faced yet.
As Venezuela battles a crippling economy, voters have blamed Maduro and his policies for crushing wages and spurring hunger. Amid the economic hardship, about a quarter of the population has migrated in search of a better life. As polls closed, tensions rose outside a polling station in Caracas. Supporters of the opposition gathered outside the polling station, waiting for the counting to begin. They demanded to enter the place to witness the vote count themselves, chanting liberty and slogans against Maduro's government.
Look, what we hope for in these elections is that Venezuela will be free. Because, well, for our grandchildren, our children, my brothers who are in Venezuela, my mother. So we hope that this yoke will be broken, that we have been under this dictatorship for 25 years, because what we have in Venezuela is a dictatorship.
The president's main challenger is Edmundo Gonzalez, a former diplomat who has the backing of a coalition of opposition parties. The opposition has managed to line up behind a single candidate after years of intra-party divisions. They now look to topple the ruling party after 25 years, and polls suggest Gonzalez has a wide lead over the incumbent.
Opposition leader Maria Corina Machado has been the focus of the coalition campaign, even though a ban on her holding public office forced her to pass the torch to Gonzalez.
Hoy Venezuela está unida. Lo estuvimos.
Today Venezuela is united. We were united for many years in the faith that we were going to be free. Today we are certain that we will be free. We will bring our children back home. We will unite this country. We will achieve the most important civic and libertarian electoral process in our country's history.
Libertaria más importante de la historia de nuestro país.
Over 21 million people were eligible to vote in these crucial presidential elections. Counting is underway amid questions over whether the results will be fair. Venezuelans say decisions by electoral authorities and the arrests of opposition staff are meant to act as obstacles.
The race to the White House has entered a new phase. With a new face, the United States is less than 100 days away from voting for a new president.
And to mark the occasion, both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris came up with renewed attacks at weekend campaign events around the country. The dueling appearances capped what was a whirlwind week in the United States politics. As the rivals exchanged barbs, Vice President Harris referred to Trump as just plain weird, while the former president painted her as evil, sick and unhinged.
Harris was quick to take over the Democratic candidacy after Joe Biden's withdrawal from the contest, but she has now cast herself as an underdog in the presidential race against Trump.
We have a fight ahead of us. We've got a fight ahead of us. And we are the underdogs in this race. Okay? Level set. We're the underdogs in this race. But this is a people power campaign. And we have momentum. The day after I announced my candidacy, we saw the best 24 hours of grassroots fundraising in presidential campaign history.
Speaking at a fundraiser in Massachusetts, Harris also stayed with her theme of comparing her background as a prosecutor with Trump's record as a convicted felon. She said her campaign was about the future, while Trump wanted to return the country to a dark past.
It almost seems like that's one thing she mentions in all of her campaigns. Well, a few miles away at a rally in Minnesota, Trump asserted that Harris would destroy the country, criticizing her on issues ranging from public safety to immigration.
Kamala, we have a new victim. We have a brand new victim. And honestly, she's a radical left lunatic. And she is, when you find out about her, all I have to say is defund the police. That was her big thing. Let's defund the police.
With the onset of the 100-day countdown, polls indicate that Harris's entry has erased the lead that Trump enjoyed over Biden for months. After Biden's withdrawal, Trump's lead has shrunk significantly. According to a Wall Street Journal poll, the former president has a 2 percentage point lead over Harris, standing at 49% to 47%. The 2-point advantage over Harris is minimal when viewed against the 6-point lead he enjoyed over Biden in a survey earlier this month.
In fact, a Reuters Ipsos opinion poll shows Harris taking a marginal lead over Trump. As per the poll, after taking over the nomination, Harris leads Trump 44% to 42% among registered voters. In the same poll taken before Biden's exit, Harris and Trump tied at 44%. In comparison, Biden faced a 2-point deficit against Trump in that poll, and according to a new PBS news poll, Harris and Trump are statistically tied after Biden's exit, and more voters are moving into the undecided camp.
The results signal slight movement in the Democrats' direction. They will now look to capitalize on the gains in the next 100 days and curb the momentum that Trump's campaign gained after the first debate. And the blue camp is right on track. Harris's election campaign has said that it has raised $200 million since she became the Democratic Party's presidential candidate. They've also signed up 170,000 new volunteers this week.
Now, this indicates that Harris has made strides for the Democrats, reinforcing belief in Biden's historic decision.
And with less than 100 days to go for the U.S. elections, reports say that U.S. President Joe Biden could announce plans to reform the Supreme Court.
Well, news outlet Politico has quoted two people familiar with the matter, saying that Biden is likely to back term limits for justices and an enforceable code of ethics. Biden had said earlier this week during an Oval Office address that he would call for reform of the court. He is also expected to seek a constitutional amendment to limit immunity for presidents and some other office holders.
This follows a July Supreme Court ruling that said presidents have broad immunity from prosecution. In recent days, Biden has been vocal in criticizing the Supreme Court and its decisions.
According to reports, Biden is expected to make the announcement in Texas on Monday, and the specific proposals could change. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court had been considering adopting an ethics code for several years. The effort took on added urgency after it was reported last year that Justice Clarence Thomas did not disclose luxury trips that he accepted from a major Republican donor. Public confidence in the court has slipped sharply in recent years.
In June, a survey for the Associated Press Knox Center for Public Affairs research found that 4 in 10 U.S. adults do not have confidence in judges. 70% believe they are more likely to be guided by their own ideology rather than serving as neutral arbiters.
Japanese Defense Minister Minoru Kara held trilateral talks with his US and South Korean counterparts.
The three signed a treaty as well to enhance security ties between the three countries. The meeting was the first ever to be held in Tokyo. Kihara said it marks a new phase in the country's trilateral relationship amid escalating tensions in the South China Sea.
The meeting also comes following a military pact that was recently signed between Russia and North Korea. The growing military might of China has been forcing Japan to withdraw from decades of its post-war pacifism in recent years. In 2022, Japan unveiled a plan to double the defense spending to 2% of its GDP. Washington also wants to tap Japanese industry to help ease pressure on US defense companies stretched by the demand generated by conflicts in Ukraine and in West Asia.
On Sunday, the United States also announced plans for a major revamp of its military command in Japan. The move is expected to deepen cooperation among the two countries that labeled China as the greatest strategic challenge facing the region. And the United States has announced plans for a major revamp of its military command in Japan.
Well, the move is expected to deepen coordination among the two countries that labeled China as the greatest strategic challenge facing the region.
The PRC, Russia, and North Korea continue to threaten global security with their increasing emphasis on nuclear capabilities. So our extended deterrence relationship is more important than ever.
The announcement followed security talks in Tokyo between U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and their respective Japanese counterparts, Yoko Kamikawa and Minoru Kihara.
The United States will upgrade the U.S. Forces Japan to a joint force headquarters with expanded missions and operational responsibilities. Now, this will be the most significant change to U.S. Forces Japan since its creation, and one of the strongest improvements in our military ties with Japan in 70 years.
The minister said in a joint statement that the new command structure will be implemented in parallel with Tokyo's own plans to establish a joint command for its forces by March 2025. The overall is among several measures taken to address what the country said was an evolving security environment, noting various threats from superpower China. Russian President Vladimir Putin has issued a new warning to the West. On the occasion of Russian Navy Day, Russian President said Washington has risked triggering a Cold War-style missile crisis with its decision to deploy munitions to Germany.
Russian President's statement comes after the United States said it would deploy long-range missiles in Germany from 2026. These shipments will include SM-6 Tomahawk cruise missiles and hypersonic missiles. Vladimir Putin addressed sailors from Russia, China, Algeria and India and declared that Moscow will mirror actions of the United States.
If the US implements such plans, we will consider ourselves free from the previously imposed one-sided moratorium on the deployment of medium and shorter-range strike systems, including increasing the capabilities of our Navy's coastal forces. Today, the development of a number of such systems is in its final stages. We will take mirror measures for the deployment, taking into account the actions of the US and their satellites in Europe and other countries of the world.
Putin, who sent his army into Ukraine in 2022, casts the war as part of a historic struggle with the West. Putin claims the West humiliated Russia after Soviet Union fell in 1991 by encroaching on what he considers Moscow's sphere of influence. Ukraine and the West say that Putin is engaged in an imperial-style land grab. They have vowed to defeat Russia, which currently controls about 18% of Ukraine, including Crimea and parts of 4 regions in eastern Ukraine.
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. Of course, there is a lot more lined up on the other side of the break. When you're back, we get you updates on what happened at the Quad Foreign Ministers meet in Tokyo. And ahead of the meeting, India's Foreign Minister met up with US and Australian counterparts. We'll get you the complete lowdown on that.
Also on the other side, India's Olympic medalist Manu Bhaker speaks to WION. We'll get you that exclusive conversation. Do stay tuned for that.
Namaste. Hello friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at yoursarthi@such.org.in.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
The quest for an Olympic medal is sport's greatest pursuit. Over 10,000 sportspersons are descending on Paris to realize their dreams.
The Olympics, it's a sweet way, but it comes with pressure.
The Olympic Games are the pinnacle of sport, and they demand sacrifices from both sportspersons and those covering it. I'm Jaishankar, and I will be tracking the best in sport over the next 3 weeks from here in Paris.
Can India's sporting stars double their tally from Tokyo? Will new stars emerge, or will sport's big names maintain their stranglehold? Watch Gunning for Glory through the Paris Olympics at these times on WION.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I should push myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with him and I'm Shivan. Let's start with the headlines.
Israel's Security Cabinet authorizes Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government to decide on the manner and the timing of a response to a rocket strike in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights that killed 12 teenagers and children.
The White House says rocket fire that killed 12 young people in the Golan Heights was conducted by Lebanese Hezbollah, calls the attack horrific.
President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says Turkey might enter Israel to help Palestinians as it had done in the past in Libya and Nagorno-Karabakh does not spell out what sort of intervention he was suggesting.
Millions of Venezuelans voted on Sunday in a fraught presidential election, with socialist incumbent Nicolas Maduro facing the biggest challenge yet to his party's 25-year hold on power.
Kamala Harris's election campaign says it has raised $200 million and signed up 170,000 new volunteers in the week since she became the Democratic Party's presidential candidate.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken emphasizes the importance of a just and enduring peace for Ukraine in a meeting with Indian Foreign Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar. The discussion comes amid a visit planned to Ukraine by Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
feel like, okay, this time it's a bronze for me, maybe next time it'll be a gold. You never know.
India's Manu Bhaker might have become the first female Indian shooter to win an Olympic medal, but she isn't done yet. Bhaker targets a gold at the Paris Games after winning a bronze medal.
I feel like, okay, this time.
Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met with US counterpart Antony Blinken ahead of the Quad meet in Tokyo.
Right, and both leaders extensively discussed bolstering coordination between India and the United States, collectively committing to promote a free, open and prosperous Indo-Pacific region.
Now, a press release from the US State Department affirmed the key agenda underlining this meeting ahead of the Quad meet. Blinken was also accompanied by the Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asian Affairs, Donald Lu, and State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller. The Secretary of State underscored the importance of realizing a just and enduring peace for Ukraine in accordance to the UN Charter. This ahead of a planned visit by Indian Prime Minister Modi next month.
The Indian External Affairs Minister took to X, doubling down on the shared commitment of both nations to the Indo-Pacific peace, while stating that he looked forward to the Quad meet.
Ahead of the meet, Jaishankar also met with Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong, where they are said to have spoken extensively on security, trade and education.
According to reports, the key topics discussed in the bilateral between India and the United States also included the deteriorating situation in West Asia, along with the conflict in Ukraine, of course. Prime Minister Modi's visit to Russia, which coincided with the NATO summit in Washington earlier this month, left the United States and its allies a bit wary of India's foreign policy outreach.
Now, last week at a congressional hearing, Donald Lu expressed disappointment over the symbolism and timing of the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Russia. New Delhi, however, rejected Lu's comments and asserted that all countries have the freedom of choice in a multipolar world. It remains to be seen how both sides respond to Prime Minister Modi's upcoming visit to Ukraine next month. This will be the Indian Prime Minister's first visit to the country since the beginning of the war in 2022.
All right, we turn our focus to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's take on the dollar's strength in recent years.
Now, according to Donald Trump, a strong dollar is hurting American industries. But Yellen rejected that argument and said the situation wasn't that simple. Yellen last week said the effects of a strong US dollar need to be evaluated in a broader perspective. This reflects her commitment to G7 nations' pledge to market-set exchange rates. She also downplayed the impact of global trade on the loss of manufacturing jobs in the United States. A strong dollar has turned into a hot topic in the run-up to the November presidential election. The Republicans have rallied against a strong dollar.
However, Yellen cheered President Joe Biden's economic policies, widely called Bidenomics. She said Biden's policies on infrastructure, semiconductors, clean energy and electric vehicles via the Inflation Reduction Act have offered support for U.S. factories. According to her, the U.S. economy's strength has attracted foreign capital, strengthening the dollar. Yellen said, I'm quoting her, "We believe that's how the system should work."
In contrast, Donald Trump says the country's major trading partners have colluded to keep their currencies weak compared to the dollar. His running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, has proposed devaluing the dollar as a way to boost American manufacturing.
Trump says we have a big currency problem. Nobody wants to buy our product because it's too expensive.
All right, next up, let's look at how interest rates over 2-decade highs in the US for a year have impacted the broader economy.
The Federal Reserve, in its fight against surging inflation, hiked rates aggressively to the highest in over 20 years. The rate hikes are starting to now take a toll on the economy. Our next report explores this. Take a look.
The Fed has managed to take the steam off an overheated U.S. economy without pushing it into a recession. However, high interest rates are finally starting to show their effect. In the coming week, the Fed will likely keep rates on hold at its meeting. Investors, though, are looking for a Fed pivot signal with expectations for a start to rate cuts as early as September. Until then, though, policymakers need to assess the impact of monetary policy on the economy. The U.S. housing market was the most visibly affected by rate hikes. The Fed's policies caused borrowing costs to skyrocket and property prices to soar. The affordability of housing is at a level not seen in over 30 years of data. Usually, companies are less likely to invest and expand when interest rates are high, which acts as a brake on stock prices. But investors have mostly ignored the warnings, sending stock prices soaring to record highs. Since the Fed began hiking rates in March 2022, the S&P 500 has jumped by almost 25%, increasing household wealth by around $3 trillion. However, households with higher incomes are benefiting from the booming stock market. And finally, there are signs of a slowing U.S. jobs market, which repeatedly defied expectations of a downturn. The number of people who have been unemployed for over 27 weeks or longer reached 1.5 million in June. That marks the highest level since 2017, barring a brief surge during the pandemic. Many households, especially those with lower incomes, are falling back on loan and credit card payments. Smaller businesses are taking the biggest hit. Projections from Fitch Ratings indicate that the default rate on loans will rise to 5% from 5.5% this year. That would be the highest level since after the financial crisis in 2009. Policymakers need to take note and act with caution before permanent economic damage is done. Business Bureau Report, WION The World is One.
All right, on to developments now from the world of technology. The U.S. Justice Department is accusing TikTok of harnessing the capability to gather bulk information on users' views on divisive social issues such as gun control, abortion, religion. It's believed that TikTok and its Beijing-based parent company, ByteDance, used an internal web suite system called Lock. What did it do? The tool enabled TikTok employees to speak directly with ByteDance engineers in China. In other words, TikTok employees use Lock to send sensitive data about US users.
According to federal officials, the information has been stored on Chinese servers and is accessible to ByteDance employees in China. One more time, US makes a strong point as to why the video sharing app is a threat to the national security.
Health and child rights experts raised alarm about the increasing portrayal of e-cigarettes and vapes as healthier alternatives to traditional tobacco products. They've cautioned that this misleading narrative is a strategy attempt by the industry to target and trap the young population, particularly those aged 10 to 19 years. Experts say India has rightly banned these products, and this ban has potentially saved at least 24 million young people from falling into the trap of addiction.
Malaysia will require social media services to apply for a license if they have more than 8 million users in the country from the 1st of August. This is an attempt to combat increasing cyber offences. The Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission, in a statement, says the license is in line with Cabinet's decision that social media and internet messaging services comply with Malaysian laws aimed at fighting scams, cyberbullying and sexual crimes. If social media services fail to apply for a license by January 1st, 2025, then legal action will be taken against them. Earlier this year, Malaysia reported a sharp increase in harmful social media content. It even urged social media firms, including Facebook parent Meta and short video platform TikTok, to step up monitoring on their platforms. Well, one has to admit South Korea is simply unstoppable when it comes to archery.
The women's team won a 10th straight Olympic gold medal after beating China in a thrilling shootout. The South Korean squad comprised of Jeon Hyun-young, Lim Si-hyun and Nam Soo-yeon, all first-time Olympians. After winning the first two sets of the match, the South Korean women began to struggle, allowing China to level the score in the next two sets.
The shootout was an intense affair. The score appeared to be tied at 27 points apiece, with two of South Korea's three arrows landing on the line between 9 and 10 points. Officials had to bring a magnifying glass to determine the arrows had in fact earned the 10 points, which South Korea needed to win the gold. The victory means the Koreans have won every single gold medal since the women's archery team event was introduced at the 1988 Seoul Olympics. That means when the LA Games in 2028 come around, their women's team would not have lost a match at the Olympics in 40 years.
Ace shooter Manu Bhaker opened India's account at the Paris Olympics. The 22-year-old broke a 12-year-old shooting jinx.
What a journey it has been for her. And she did this to clinch bronze in the women's 10-meter air pistol event, shortly after becoming the first Indian woman to win an Olympic medal in shooting. Bhaker spoke to WION's sports editor Digvijay Singh Deo in Chateauroux,